morning. I'd first like to thank Bob for providing an opportunity to speak here. I would like to thank the committee who obviously must approve of this in their total insanity to ask me to speak anyway. You know, if you had a good committee of tone today, you would have asked me to speak in Manchester. There is a convention in Manchester, which my wife is at. And I would like to thank everybody who's spoken here this morning. I would like to thank Pat. She doesn't always get it quite right. One or two things this morning, she talked about her loyalty to her meeting UNEP. She's like many alcoholics because her group, which happens to be my group, we have 3 meetings a week. So what you people usually put in with 1 meeting of your group, we have 3 meetings, and you've got to be there. The other thing she kind of garbaged up this morning, she talked of service, you know, wonderful service voice she suddenly put on, and she talked about emptying the ashtray. Jesus, we're a non-smoking group. Intrigued listening to PJ talk with the chairman just a moment ago when the pots were going round. He said, was it all right? And that's a good AA man. Somebody who's not so sure that it's all good, has been all right. And he said, I didn't want to talk about too much treatment stuff. I didn't quite button into that, because as far as I'm concerned, the biggest treatment facility I know is Alcoholics Anonymous. And there are 8 times in the book where it mentions AA treatment. It also tells us in the book that we do give advice. It also tells us in the book that we do give direction. I think these are some of the things we've got to try and take on board if we are to call ourselves members of Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to go back to 1965 because I think it's very important we do this morning. In 1965, too, and I happened to be among them at the time, had a growing awareness that something was beginning to come to an end. We'd had a conference, we had traditions, we had the beginning of concepts for world service, but we had someone still alive and up there who was in at the very beginning. We had a leader, and his name was Bill. And I think the greatest part of Bill's writings had always been, he pleaded in Alcoholics Anonymous for leaders. Leaders within the group, leaders within the intergroup, leaders within whatever you like to call part of your structure. But we had to have leaders. We did not divest in them any authority. But they had to be people who were going to be examples. And there's ever a person with all his defects of character and all his illnesses and bad health conditions, Bill was a great leader. But 1965, we knew the time was running out, the time was getting short. And I was one of those people who was in on I Am Responsible in so much that it was at the Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto in 1965. After a lot of discussion, they wanted to divest Bill of a little more of the image of responsibility. And so this slogan was chosen. When anyone, I am responsible, actually printed incorrectly, because it begins, I am responsible. When anyone, anywhere reaches out for help, I want the hand of AA always to be there. And for that, I am responsible. That means that no time can I ever leave it to the other side. And that was the intention of this declaration. It was called the Responsibility Declaration. And there were nearly 11,000 there that morning at the Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto who heard for the first time this declaration. It's been tucked away for a number of years at the bottom of our literature. And I think this is a very appropriate time to bring it up. The hand of AA, and for that I am responsible. I want to talk in general terms for a few moments about some of the things I am responsible for, and I think that one of the first things I am responsible for as an AA member is to inform about Alcoholics Anonymous within my group to the newcomer, to the person who is coming off the drug of his choice, because he is very, very flaky. I was blessed, so blessed, because I had the longest little stay of my life. I had 10.5 months after my last drink, incarcerated in the locked ward of a mental hospital. It's a good treatment center. But I was incarcerated with a book. Now, people these days, we expect them to take on board all kinds of things, and they're just not capable of it when they're coming off. You have to realize that, realize how flaky many of us old-timers were, certainly, back in our days. And we have to inform him. We have to inform him about AA. Not about the way Travers Cousins got sober, not the way Pat Campbell got sober, not the way Bob or Felix or Johnny Mack got sober, because those ways would often make other people drunk. But let's try and keep him pure at the very beginning and give it to him the straight AA way, the way we, who have been around quite some time, are still trying today. Some of us may be falling a little short, but we are still trying, and we have got our goal in view all the time. Now I want to take it very simply, and I'm going to do a bit of identification. I am a recovered alcoholic. My name is Travers. I'm sober today by the grace of God and through a recovery program offered me in the form of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was born Jewish. I was brought up on a farm by my grandparents. My family were career bent. I took my first drink at the age of 14. I was at a social occasion, and I drank from the glass, and I was halfway down that glass, and I suddenly felt much better. Better than what, you may ask yourself? Well, I'll tell you. Better than what I was before I took that drink. Now, up to that moment I took that drink, I had never realized in my life that I felt unwell. But that was the effect it had on me, because I had never felt so well as when I took it. In order to understand that, you have to look back to me at the age of 14. I was 14 years of age. I was about to enter adolescence. That wonderful time in a man's life when he has 3 left feet and doesn't know what to do with his hands. I had an appalling stutter. I am cross-eyed, and I was born Jewish, which wasn't a very healthy thing to be at that time for a person. So I didn't have a lot going for me. So I had that instant, immediate relationship with something that made me feel better. I had my student days. I gravitated to older company because they drank, and little boys of my age didn't. I said I wanted to be with older company because they were so much more versed in the profession I was going to enter. None. At the age of 21, I contracted a marriage which I believe might have been successful to this day, although we had over just 40 years of divorce. I was still with her yesterday, batting in there. So, you know, there might have stood some kind of a chance, that marriage. I had a certain amount of initial success in my career. I was earning £5,000 a year before the war, which wasn't bad money. At the age of 21, we married. had children, but alcoholism began to take over. I don't want to go through the long, gory details, but after a few years it was obvious that she had not married the man she thought she was going to marry, and I wanted her out because I couldn't stand this millstone around my neck. By mutual arrangement, we departed, and I thought, oh, now I can get on with living, and I realized then all I did was to get on with dying. Bring it total very quickly, I was admitted into 32 different mental asylums in this country. I had 9 courses of shock treatment, and I was introduced by the medical profession to every kind of drug that I had ever known up to that moment and up to this day, really. And then I met up with AA, and that would be nearly 34 years ago. And it was through my mother. My mother was the one person in life I loathed more than anyone else. But she was the person who went out, and though she would not have me anywhere near her home, she went to find AA, which she had read about. The first 4 members she found were all drunk. She kept going, and she found one who came to see me. I was sleeping in a doss house. And he laid it on the table for me, and he took me to a meeting, and I went to 5 meetings in about 2 weeks. And then I wandered back out, and I lived on Skid Row for the next 3 years. But something had gone in, because I had believed today to have been properly informed by 2 men. Pulled no punches and told me about it, and told me in such a direct way that I actually never forgot it. And then, in the spring, 31 years ago, I came in out of the cold, and I was put into this mental hospital for the last time, and after 10.5 months, I was released. Now, something happened in that 10.5 months, and I'll tell you what it was. I remembered that the 2 men told me, you've got to get hold of a textbook. They said it's called Alcoholics Anonymous. They said you'll read it about 20 times, and then you'll begin to study it, and then you'll begin to put into practice what it says. So I carried that with me, and that's what I did. And I began to work my way through it, and I came out after 10.5 months with a good knowledge of the big book Alcoholics Anonymous, which is a very unfortunate thing, because nobody else in this country at that time I could find had any knowledge of it at all. They didn't even want it booked because it was at meetings, because it was an American thing for those Americans, those Yankees. And I found that I was completely at odds in my thinking and my talking. It was completely different to what the people I met at Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. However, I've managed to hang in there somewhere down the years. And I'm grateful because I believe it's brought me through to today. AA, as I do understand it, is in a textbook. And I believe that's the only thing I have got to inform anybody who is of serious intent. I'm not going to waste my time with people who are not of serious intent and who want to recover in Alcoholics Anonymous. People who are not of serious intent and who want to recover in Alcoholics Anonymous. I think one of the first things we've got to straighten out with them, or incidentally, I should be fair to you, when I talk at a meeting like this, I have to tell you, I only ever talk to one person in the room, and that's me. So nobody can ever really take exception to anything I might say during the meeting. If you care to listen in, that's your prerogative. I'm not one of those people, you see, who say, of course, I only speak for myself. I don't do that. I try to be a little voice of AA. If anybody hears me say anything at this meeting today that is not AA, then I'd be very much obliged if they would come up to me, because I think that's dangerous talk. I want to tell you a little bit about the dangerous talk slogan. We have it in our group. Some of us are old enough to remember During the war, there used to be placards everywhere of dangerous talk costs lives. And there was a picture of a couple, a sailor and a girl talking in a bar, and there would be the agent, secret agent, listening. As a result of that conversation, perhaps the convoy would be attacked. It was going to mean death. And I believe dangerous talk costs lives is just as important in AA today as it ever was in wartime Britain. Because I hear a lot of dangerous talk around in meetings, and I've heard it there for years. And I believe I am responsible for helping to try and root it out. These people who say there are no musts in AA. Have you ever heard that? There are 28 in the first 8 chapters. Musts. One of the good exercises is to write out the musts and the shoulds and the oughts and see if you've done them. There's people who say there are no rules in AA. Have you ever heard that? The person who says there are no rules is making the rules straight away. Then there are the people, the easier, softer writers, who start off with, you don't have to do this, you don't have to do that, oh, I've never read the big book, oh, I don't work the steps, oh, I do it my way, oh, it's like a self-service thing, I just take a little of this and a little of that. These are the dangerous talk merchants. These are the people who I think have depleted our membership down the years and have caused people to relapse time and time again because they have not given it to them straight. Now, the one thing I think we've got to try and talk about is the start at the very beginning. Hear people say, I'm sober. You heard me say, incidentally, that I was recovered, didn't you? Did you know that? Do you know why I said that? Because that's what it says on the front piece of the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. Story of many thousands of men and women. The story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. Because I believe it's entirely possible to recover from alcoholism. And I think it is possible to maintain that recovery. I believe that because I have seen it, and I have seen people go to their graves, very recovered people, and they have been in that state of grace, if you like, for countless years. Let's come back to the new person. Let's do some little informing. This was given to me in my very early days. You talk to the new man, and he talks in general terms about getting sober. Well, let's play the old AA game of coming back to Webster's dictionary. Sober. Moderate, temperate, avoiding excess in matters of appetite, diet, conduct. Not addicted to the use of strong drink, grave, serious, solemn, indicating a serious mind or purpose. Quiet or sedate, of grave, dignified or discreet deportment, staid. Of dress, not glaring, showy, not readily excited or carried away, of a calm, dispassionate judgment. Free from extravagance or excess, moderate, sensible, not fanciful, guided by sound reason, sane, rational. Now, that is what sober means. That is one of our goals. That is what we are aiming for. And most of those things in that Webster's dictionary are highlighted in that wonderful Just for Today card. If you take that Webster's dictionary, you will find they are all highlighted as dress, not showy, things like that. Not irrational, sane, thinking, beginning to improve your mind. All those things are there. Now I want to talk about the possibility of getting that across to our new member. That it is going to be necessary for him because not just his flakiness, but in the first few months at least, there's got to be a kind of almost purgatory, a state through which he has to pass before he can begin to come sober. Because he's got to get rid of a lot of the old garbage in his mind before he can take any in. And I think this is very important. And I so love it when someone comes up to me and says, I've been dry for 6 months, I've been dry for a year. And I think that's a wonderful thing. somebody comes to me and says, I've been sober for 3 months. I think it's not his fault. It's because somebody hasn't spent the time to sit down and tell him what being sober means. Now, another little thing I want to throw in here that's the great danger of AA groups at the whole the moment, and this is worldwide. We had a hell of a battle in AA starting in the early 60s because we found many of our members were slipping and sliding and relapsing when we felt somehow they shouldn't. And when we took a look at them, of course, we found that they were using prescribed drugs. Now, I've got nothing against prescribed drugs, but the doctors didn't quite have the root interest of our problem at heart. And these people were difficult people to handle. They were demanding that they should have their sleeping tablets. They were demanding that they should have their Valium, their Librium, whatever their particular potion was at that time. And they were very difficult days for AA because we had to come out, some of us, and try and do some informing. Yeah, but when I was back at Hazelden in the 60s, we were trying to pick up the roots of how we could get out and fight this. And I think AA did a marvelous job because AA stayed clean, but at our grassroots membership we would say, hey, we don't do that. We don't take that. And we would tell them why we didn't, because it blocked us off from placing a dependency for our recovery on Alcoholics Anonymous and its program. We have nothing against chemicals. You know, you can go and have some tomato ketchup or HP, but if it blocks you off from taking what we have to offer, and you say you want what we have, then we have got a fight on our hands. Now, as you know, or may not know, that when Valium came on the market, the manufacturer's literature said that Valium was a fine drug. But they were very honest. Do you know that they said it should only be used for a duration not beyond 5 days? That's what they said. Some people found it an easier, softer way, and I'm talking about the medical profession, to prescribe it beyond 5 days. Now, I want to tell you about something else, because I think there is something more dangerous than the soft tranquilizers and sleeping tablets and things like that were to AA. And it's happening today, and it's alive, and it's with us. And that is, I'm finding more and more members who are having a rough time with it, are not getting down to the program and working the program, because at our group meetings they keep on talking about their analysts. Now, I want to examine what analysts have to offer the alcoholic. I'm not talking of other people, I'm talking of the alcoholic. Well, the first thing we know, the greatest analyst the world has ever known, Dr. Carl Jung, said he had nothing to offer them. That is the first point. Numbers of doctors down since have been honest enough to say, no, go to AA, because you have working for you a program upon which you will have to become dependent before you can make it work. Now, I agree with what P.J. said about being dependent people. That is why we are such natural people for a recovery program as offered by AA, because we should be willing to become dependent. But we won't become dependent if the easier, softer route is being offered. Now, I think we have to examine this in relation to our groups. I don't think we have to tell people not to go to psychoanalysts. I don't think that, but we have to talk openly and honestly about our dependency upon the recovery program offered by AA. And I think we have to give them examples and tell them that, please God, don't let anything ever come in the way between me and my single dependency upon Alcoholics Anonymous. Part of the way of informing the newcomer or the old-timer is, I think, with the book. Now, I want to just offer you 3 or 4 things before I close out the book that I think are the 3 or 4 most important things of all. I think the first is a short passage which, in the doctor's opinion, describes completely the alcoholic and his problem and offers a solution. And it comes in 1 paragraph. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks, drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over again, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. One paragraph. And if we who are earnestly in saying, I am responsible in carrying an AA message, initially to people, that I believe is the message. And if you spent a few weeks never moving off that paragraph until the newcomer has got it, he's going to thank you for the rest of his life, because he will then understand the nature of his problem. And he will also see the solution. Is it too much to ask? What's going to get in the way? Are we going to be wimpish now? I don't want to be seen working with someone with a big book. And other people might like it and not like it in the group. Or am I too lazy? Or am I too unwell myself to accept that in my life which has never hit me before? Our friend over here read so beautifully the 5th chapter, which contains the 12 steps. I'm always surprised in the book how early most of the steps come. They come in Bill's story on page 13. At the hospital, I was separated from alcohol for the last time. Treatment seemed wise, for I showed signs of delirium tremens. Then I humbly offered myself to God, as I then understood him to do with me as he would. Step 3. I placed myself reservedly under his care and protection, and his care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, that without him I was lost. I ruthlessly faced my sins and became willing to have my newfound friend take them away root and branch. Step 6 and 7. My schoolmate visited me, and I fully acquainted him with my problems and deficiencies. Step 5. We made a list of people I had hurt or toward whom I felt resentment. I expressed my entire willing to approach these individuals, admitting my wrong. Step 8. I was to write all such matters to the utmost of my ability. Step 9. I was to test my thinking of the new God consciousness within. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. That's me, step 10. I was to sit quietly when in doubt, asking only for direction and strength to meet my problems as he would have me. Never was to I pray for myself except as my request bore on my usefulness to others. Then only might I expect to receive. But that would be in great measure. That's me, step 11. My friend promised when these things were done, I would enter into a new relationship with my Creator, that I would have the elements of a way of living which answered all my problems, belief in the power of God, plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility to establish and maintain the new order of things which were essential requirements to my well-being. That to me is step 12. And we're still at the top of page 14. P.J. said it again, I cannot give what I have not got. I'm trying to give you, to the best of my very inadequate being this morning, the AA program, as I know it, and through my fellows, as I have come to understand it. It's a we program. We work the steps. We work them together, not singly, not in isolation. It's amazing if you go to a group and you ask, simple question, how many of you have taken the first step with another person? Very, very few. I would say less than 10%. Oh, I'll do a fifth step. So what do you mean a third step? There, in the book. A lot of people, and I think treatment have really brought this into kind of, have done us no great service here because they don't point this out. See, in treatment, they take the first 5 programs of Alcoholics Anonymous. And they may gently at the end say, of course, now the first thing you've got to do is to get on moving on. When you get into AA, you've got to move on now, move on. Does anyone here know, after you've done your 5th step, how long it should be before you start on the 6th and 7th step? I will tell you, because it says so in my book. It says 1 hour. Now you just think very carefully, how many people have you seen die on that plateau of the 5th step? The big thing in their lives was to make a 5th step. They'd work through the 4th step and I'm going to do my 5th step. Then the 5th step was all over. And then nothing happened until they took a drink. And the reason they took a drink they did not get on with their program, and it tells you very specifically this after this step, feelings drink problem had disappeared will often come strongly. We feel we are on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. What a lovely, wonderful feeling which so many of us have found. And it goes on, just a little bit more. Returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for 1 hour, carefully reviewing what we have done. We thank God from the bottom of our hearts that we know him best. Taking this book down from our shelf, we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps. Carefully reading the first 5 proposals, we ask if we have omitted anything, for we are building an arch through which we shall walk a free man at last. Is our work solid so far? Are the stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement put into the foundation? Have we tried to make our mortar without sand? If we can answer to our satisfaction, Let me look at step 6 and move quickly on. I have seen hundreds of bodies scattered across that letter of this step. And while we are working like this, God is coming to us, the God of not my Jewish understanding or my Christian understanding, but the God of understanding of what I call the spiritual Lord of the universe, has brought to me in Alcoholics Anonymous. And the growth is so amazing. You remember back in step 2 we talked about a power greater than ourselves. And that was a kind of a half a foot in the door. We had to accept that. Then in step 3 we talk about God as we understand it. It changed. Power greater than ourselves. Oh, the alcohol. Could be the group. One step later we're talking about God as we understand him. Nothing in the 4th step. Come to the 5th step. Submitted before God and one other human being. Honey, we don't have to put that little bit in now as we understand him, because we are beginning to. We're getting that much closer. Power greater, God as we understand him, God. And then the real warmth and love coming through in step 7. Humbly ask him. Also, there is that familiarity. There is that closeness with this force working with us, and perhaps the other person as well, who we choose to work with in Alcoholics Anonymous. I personally am a great believer in the Psalm for ethic. I think it's what holds the members together more than anything else, is working with one particular person. Not too many voices, but one person who is willing to always, every day, expose themselves to you. Now, if you're going to take yourself a sponsor, there are 2 things you've got to find out. One, have they worked the whole of the 12 steps to the best of their ability in their lives? Because if they haven't, they're not going to have much experience to hand on to you. And the second thing is just a little thing. Find out if they are being actively sponsored themselves. Because if they're not being actively sponsored themselves, do you know what it means? It means they don't believe in sponsorship. No, I wouldn't want to be sponsored by a person who did not believe in sponsorship. We've gone through the 5th step with another person. All these steps have to be taken with another person. But the 3 specific ones, the 3rd step, the 5th step, the most important, the 6th and the 7th. I'm a great knee man. I've only got to go down on my knees and some of my arrogance, some of my big shottiness begin to ebb out of me a little. It is an amazing thing. I didn't believe it. But do these things on your knees. You know, the first time you go down, you're always frightened somebody's going to open the door and catch you. Catch you what? Catch you praying to the God of your understanding, and you don't want to be that kind of person in the eyes of others. But to hell with others. Let's get on and do what is necessary in order to maintain our sobriety. The greatest passage for me in the book that deals with this comes page 291. The day before I was due to go back to Chicago, a Wednesday, and Dr. Bob's afternoon off, he had me down to the office, and we spent 3 or 4 hours formally going through the 6-step program as it was at that time. The 6 steps were: 1, complete deflation; 2, dependence and guidance from a higher power; 3, moral inventory; 4, confession; 5, restitution; 6, continued work with other alcoholics. Dr. Bob led me through these steps. At the moral inventory, he brought up some of my bad personality traits or character defects, such as selfishness, conceit, jealousy, carelessness, intolerance, ill temper, sarcasm, and resentment. You will note that it wasn't the writer who brought them out, it was Dr. Bob, who was fearless enough to tell this man how he saw him. He goes on, we went over these at great length, and when he finally asked me if I wanted these defects of character removed, when I said yes, we both knelt at his desk and prayed. Each of us asking to have these defects taken away. This picture is still vivid. If I live to be 100, it will always stand out in my mind. It was very impressive. And I wish that every AA could have the benefit of this type of sponsorship today. I'm involved with a little thing some of you may have heard of called the Big Book Study Group, started by 2 wonderful men 17 years ago, Jim Creaney and Charlie Palmer. One for Black in Little Rock, Arkansas, one for Dirk Farmer in Oklahoma. And they started studying the book together. And somebody joined them, a man called Wesley. And they used to meet up at conventions, they used to go up to the room. They never got to the convention at all, they used to study the book. And then after a couple of years, they decided they'd have a weekend together of their own kind of little study group. And that was 17 years ago. Now those 2 men today have given their life to it. They don't get any money for it, but 46 weekends out of 52, they are traveling somewhere. Talk about the big book. They're nothing special. They're not dynamic, charismatic circuit speakers. They're just like any other alcoholic you would find in your group who has become infected, intoxicated with the magic of what is in that book. Sometimes they have 200 or 300 people, but most times it's up to 1,000, and sometimes up to 4,000 people in one weekend. They have done more to bring back the program than any other people alive since that little group started way back in Akron. I'm very fortunate because Jim and Queenie can't do the next big book study. They're in Sacramento this week. Next week, they start off with about 10 days, a 10-day study group, cruising around the Caribbean. Jim and Queenie can't do it. Morgan, please can't do it because I'm going to do it for you. Now, I know that I will learn myself, although I will be giving it to Charlie. There will still be magic popping up into my eyes that I have never seen before. If you are of service, serious intent for your own personal recovery, if you are serious intent to help somebody else really recover, I suggest you start working with the book yourself first, and then somebody else. I've gone on a bit and I'm sorry. I want to just say two things before I close. And one is that all this adds up to, very simply, a matter of priorities for me. And I was helped in priorities about 10 years ago. I knew a girl who wasn't an alcoholic, who was being given a medical sentence. She was going to die in under 6 months. And she was the kind of person you could talk to about these things. And I said to her, now that you know you're going to die, is there anything in your life you would have changed? And she said, yes, Travis. I would have changed 3 things. I would have played with my children more often. I would have loved more often. And I would have prayed more often. A few years after my last drink, I was walking up near Hadrian's Wall, near Hexham, about a place called Hawkwhistle. And I came across a little graveyard. And I'm so grateful to this day that I walked in that graveyard, because I saw an epitaph. And the epitaph was dated 1732, and it was dedicated to a little hunchback priest. The epitaph has always for me been the epitome of acceptance. It just said this: beneath this yew, in the shadow of a shade, a little humble singing priest is laid. He loved his life, of death was not afraid, and loved his Maker, though so strangely made. And that is what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me. It has brought me to a love of my Maker, though so strangely made. Being an alcoholic and having found this recovery has brought me personally to an entirely satisfactory life. Satisfactory spiritual life. And by spiritual life, I mean a life which befits a human being.